Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Om Jnanat Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumalitamina Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So we're continuing our study of Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 8. And we're going to do the last passage of chapter 8, verse 23 through 28. So in the previous passage, Krishna was trying to advocate for the practice of Ananya Bhakti. So the word Ananya means knowing no other. Ananya. Anya means other. Ananya, so the negation of another. Knowing no other. Usually we're with someone, but our heart is with someone else. This is just 5 minutes ago, Kishore told me he was at the park and there was one couple there and the boyfriend was trying to get all like, PDA with his girlfriend, but she was on her phone. That is a very practical way of saying that although I'm with you, my heart is with another. That's a simple example. Also, we worship Krishna. At least those who are devotees, they worship Krishna, or even those who are yogis and gyanis. They also worship Krishna, but their heart is with someone else. So they're worshiping because I can get something from that person. So this is not Ananya, this is Anya. So Krishna wants Ananya Bhakti, means that one's heart is with Krishna, one's goals are with Krishna. One's path is that path that leads to Krishna, like this. So in advocating for this Ananya Bhakti, no rebirth, that's because we are devotees, we are naturally selfless. So there's a difference between the two types. Virtue, as wonderful as it is for maintaining relationships, or maintaining social integrity, for living a happy, peaceful life in this world, finally it does not allow you to come out of this world. So for the yogi or for the bhakta, coming out of this world is an essential important part. So then virtue is not very much esteemed in the community of yoga or bhakti. It doesn't mean that you can be an evil person, like, now I don't have to be virtuous or something like that. But it's not esteemed. It means it is relegated to its proper place in terms of living in this world, for keeping body and mind integrity nice, for keeping relationships nice, for keeping societies nice. It's relegated to its proper place. But it's understood that this will not help actually achieve spiritual objective, specifically the objective of no rebirth. So Krishna makes this contrast very clear in that previous passage. And in this way, he advocates, so therefore you should do Ananya Bhakti, because by Ananya Bhakti, you can attain the world of no rebirth. And he gave a little description of that world. So now he wants to summarize all that he said in the last two chapters, in fact, and this last passage, verse 23 to 28. So he wants to talk about the the path of light and the path of darkness. I'm laughing because the actual Sanskrit of the words is the white path and the black path. The white path is the good one, and the black path is the bad one. So I'm just laughing just because of the sensitive social times today. You can imagine the animosity that can come up. But that's actually what it says. So we're going to hear about that today. There are two paths. Yatra kale tvanavritim avritim chaiva yogina prayata yanti tam kalam akshami bharatarshaba. So Bharatarshaba, best of the Bharatas, those who come in this lineage of Bharata, I will now speak to you about that time which the yogis leaving this body attain either the world of no rebirth or the world of rebirth, or the anavritam avritam. Anavritam means no return, or the world of return. So I now want to speak about these two paths. One path means you take the path and then you don't return. Another path you take and then you come back. So I want to speak about these two paths. So first path he speaks about is the path of light. Agnir Jyotir Aha Shukla Samasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Jana. So those persons, Jana, who are Brahma Vido, Brahmavido means those who are knowers of Brahman, those who are knowers of Shastra, spiritual Shastras like Upanishads, Vedanta Sutra. You can even say Yoga Sutra also. Those who know spiritual science, they're called as Brahmavida. Then they take the path of light. And this path of light, basically, I'm not going to go into details on it because it's referring to a path that's mentioned in the Vedas. But basically, when persons die, there's a particular path in which one is basically escorted by different deities or devatas who escort one on through different planetary systems on the way towards one's final destination. So it's like a transcendental, well, not necessarily transcendental, but like a astral, that might be a relatable word. Astral sort of stewardship, or what is the woman's name on the airplane called? Steward also? Stewardess. Huh? Flight attendant? Stewardess, okay. Stewardess. It's like a astral steward who kind of escorts you on your way towards your final destination. For some people, that final destination is the attainment of a spiritual reality where there is no return. And for others, they escort you, okay, this way, back to the material world, back to your material body. So in this verse 24, Krishna is speaking about the various deities that escort one toward the realm of no return. Agni means fire, Jyotir means light, but the commentators on these verses explain that these actually refer to deities that escort one on the path toward the final attainment, which in this case is Brahman. So those who take spiritual life seriously, they are knowers of Brahman. Then upon quitting that body, then they are escorted by these different deities toward the path, toward the place of no return, a spiritual reality. So, and as a general point, those who are interested in spiritual life, they get this particular result. But then there are the others. Dumo Ratrisata Krishna Samasa Dakshinayanam Tatra Tandrama Samjyotir Yogi Prapya Nivartate. So the yogi who quits his body, Yogi Prapya Nivartate. There's a yogi who comes back. Who is that yogi? One who leaves during the smoky hour. Duma means smoke, actually. Ratri, night, Krishna, black or dark. Samasha Dakshinayanam refers to the period of the moon when it's waning, when it's becoming when it's a little bit darker. So these again refer to the various deities on the path of darkness. They escort one back to the material world and to material bodies. So these are the two paths. Krishna summarizes two paths, and this is the verse I was laughing at. Shluke Krishna gate yete jagata shashrute mati. So Shukla means white, Krishna means black. That is what it means of Krishna. Just as a side point, one time Srila Prabhupada, one disciple, he asked Prabhupada, he said, so Prabhupada, Krishna is black. He was a black body devotee of Prabhupada. So he said, so Krishna is black. And Prabhupada said, yes, but not black like you. Immediately, what comes to mind is something material. So this is not referring to that. So just want to clarify that. But here, Shukla means the path of the white path, or the path of light. It reads the path of enlightenment. For those who are interested in spiritual life, they've done the hard work of studying spiritual substance, and they go on this path of light. Then there are others that go on the path of darkness. There are persons who are not interested in spiritual life. They're only interested in enjoying the fruits of their particular work. Just like you want to enjoy the fruits of your work, right? You work hard, you have a job, and you get money from the job, and you want to enjoy that, isn't it? That is natural, isn't it? You want to enjoy. How do you enjoy? Go to some bar, drink. How else do you enjoy? Only a few varieties, huh? Especially here in East Village, that is the main activity. How else you like to? So there are people here, they want to enjoy the fruit of their work. That is most souls in this world. And you can enjoy it in terrestrial plane. And in Vedic science, there's a way by which you can go to higher planets in the material world and enjoy what you can say are celestial delights. I tend to think that's what these Middle Eastern traditions are speaking of when they talk about heaven. They're talking about places in the material world that are higher than the Earth planet, through which one can enjoy celestial delights. In fact, that is the propaganda that is often given, right? You can enjoy, and I don't even know what heaven is like precisely. When I think of heaven growing up, it was just like angels and clouds playing harpsichords. That seemed like boring as anything. Better to be here on Earth only. But then, in certain traditions, they have ideas of one can enjoy so many versions, and they have all sorts of ideas are there. So you can see the concept is very much related to material enjoyment of the senses and sensual pleasure. So that is also available in the material world, in these celestial planets. So one goes there to enjoy, and then after enjoying, when one's piety is exhausted, then again you have to return to the Earth planet. So this is called the path of darkness, or literally the Krishna path, but not the Krishna conscious path. It's a little different. The path of darkness by which one goes up, enjoys, and comes down. So these two paths, Ete Srishti Partha, these two paths, O son of Partha, they are eternal, because samsara refers to this material world, the cycle of rebirth and death. So the cycle of rebirth and death is eternal. So these two paths have always existed in this world. As long as this world has existed, and this world is eternal, without beginning and without end. Eternal means without beginning and without end. So as long as this world has existed, these two paths have existed, by which one can go up or by which one comes down. The path of light and the path of darkness. So which path do you think you are on? You're on path of light or path of darkness? Of course.
Hopefully light.
Let's say we're on the path of light, but where's our heart at? So that is the other challenge. Path of light or path of darkness? So of course, if you don't take time to study spiritual science, then the default is the path of darkness. There is no other recourse, actually. We are defeated by our own ignorance. Parabhavas tavara bodhajato yavan najignasata atmatattvam. So there's very nice verses there. Parabhavas tavara bodhajato, that one's life is defeated, abhodhajato, by ignorance. Yavan jignasata atmatattva, as long as one is not inquisitive about atmatattva. Atmatattva means the science concerning the actual self. So long as one is not inquisitive about that science, then one's life is defeated by ignorance. So you can always see what path you're actually walking on by examining your questions. Yavana jignasata atmatattva. Now jignasata means not having any questions about atmatattva. So long as you have no questions about Atma Tattva, then your life is defeated by ignorance. So if you want to see what path you're walking on, sometimes you may know, am I walking path of light or I'm walking path of darkness? Shukla path or Krishna path? Say the Krishna path. I should choose another word. How do you want to know what path you're walking, what path your heart is actually walking on? Then you just examine your questions. Then you understand what path you're actually on. Now, jignasata atma, you have no questions about Atma Tattva, then you must be on. You have some question, but there's not this question. Like what questions you ask yourself on a daily basis? Daily basis, what questions you ask yourself? We don't have to be shy. We're all in the same category. I wonder what the weather is like. First thing you do is open phone and check weather. What other questions you ask yourself? What happened on yesterday's Game of Thrones episode? Wait, it comes on Sundays, right? So what happened yesterday? Yes.
What's wrong with checking the weather?
Nothing wrong, but these are only the questions you have that becomes a problem. I check the weather regularly. But if you have najignasata atma tattva, I have no question about atma tattva. This is a problem. And the material life is such that it compels you to keep on asking questions about this material world. Especially if you watch YouTube or anything like this, like I do, then it keeps compelling you to ask questions about this material world. What's going on in North Korea? What is Donald Trump doing? So many questions you have, isn't it? So many questions you have. So how many questions do you think you ask in one day? A lot, actually, isn't it? If you think about your life in terms of questions and answers, how are you when you're meeting friends? And that question you yourself will ask to one person 2-3 times. So if you examine all the questions that you ask in one day, how many of those questions are on Atma Tattva? You figure out. If you have a good amount on Atma Tattva, that means you're on the path of light. That means that is your primary interest, because you ask questions when you're interested in something, right? Why we ask questions about Game of Thrones? And don't act like you didn't ask that question. Or isn't it? Why no? Okay, that's because you what TV show you like? Or you did like, okay, we're spiritual, so we don't watch TV now. But what TV show you used to like to watch?
Baking shows.
Baking shows. Oh my God. He also likes. So you ask questions about these baking shows. It means you're interested in baking. Otherwise, you would not ask questions about that. Just like if Kevin, he comes up to me, Jad, did you see that baking show? This is nonsense, because I don't have any interest in baking show. But if he asks me some other question about Game of Thrones, okay, I haven't watched Game of Thrones yet, but it's just a really good example because many are into that. Then I show a lot. You inquire about things you are actually interested in, that your heart is invested into, isn't it? So if you have no questions about Atma Tattva, that means your heart is not invested in Atma Tattva. That means you're on the path of darkness, the path that will lead to rebirth. You understand? Does it make sense? So you see what type of questions you're asking. We're not saying other questions are disallowed, but you just say, what is the balance? Yes, does it make sense to you? What type of questions you ask? What is your name? Adam. What type of questions you ask? You don't have to say out loud. Yeah. I start asking everyone, what type of question? Everyone's like, I was really into bhagavad-Gita. So you only examine your questions and you'll see what path you are on. So then this way you can see many of us, or at least most of the world certainly, is on the path of darkness. And darkness includes virtuous life, per the previous discussion. That is also darkness. How to be a good person, how to make your body and mind more peaceful. These are all, again, important for existing in this world, but that is exactly the problem that the Vedanta tradition is trying to fix. So Krishna in verse 27 wants to glorify those who know these two paths. Wait, ekaya yati anavritam anyaya vartate puna. So by one path, you attain no return. By another path, you attain return. So by what path do you attain no return? What is that path? Path of light. And how do you get on the path of light? Yep. What type of questions? Questions about God, about self, about purpose, ultimate purpose, and so on. So by that path, you go to no return. By the path you return, you ask questions about what? Game of Thrones. Etc. Game of Thrones just represents a category. So in verse 27, Krishna summarizes, or he wants to glorify the power of knowing these two paths. This is verse 27. Yes. Naite Shrishti Parta Jana Yogi Muhyanti Kashtana Tasma Sarveshu Kaleshu Yoga Yukta Bhavarjuna. So Naite Shrishti. So Etan Shrishti Janan Parta, your knowledge, a lack of ability to discern. That's why you get bewildered. When you don't have knowledge, bewilderment comes. So here, namuhyate means the yogi is not bewildered because he knows these two paths. And by knowing these two paths, he knows which is beneficial and which is not beneficial. He knows that the path of light is beneficial for his ultimate welfare, and the path of darkness is beneficial, if at all, only for his immediate welfare. Immediate welfare means gratification in the right now, or in this life, or some next life in this world. So this discernment is being glorified. The ability to discern what is light, what is darkness. And that is also glorified, even if you don't think of them as two paths, but you think of them as just existing within the person itself. That is also glorified. Knowing what is light and what is darkness, the ability to discern the difference, that is appreciable by anyone, isn't it? Just like light and dark also exist in individuals. And by existing in one way, you ignite the light path, and by existing in another way, you ignite the dark path, isn't it? We have practical experience of this regularly, I would suspect, and or at least we've had, by certain activities. For example, I don't want to get too many, but example, you go on a computers, internet, Wi-Fi, they have a way of bringing out the dark side in us. And many of us, I suspect, have that experience of being brought to the dark side, isn't it? And all the advertisement invite you to the dark side. You have experience with this? You go into some Put Locker. That's where you could download some movie illegally. And on the side, they have so many invitations to come to the dark side. Sorry to give such a vivid example, but laughter is indicative of that we've seen the invitation. And of course, we are yogis, so we don't accept those invitations. But before we were yogis, we might have been like, all right. Isn't it? So even within our own self, there's light, there's darkness also. So if you have the ability to discern what activity will invoke light and what activity will invoke darkness, and you choose the activity that will invoke light, that is also appreciated, isn't it? You yourself will appreciate it because your life will become uncluttered by complications if you're able to do so. And others will also appreciate you. Otherwise, you're just like I like to say, a gremlin walking around, messing things up. You remember this movie? There's a movie called The Gremlins. And they look real cute, but they were just jacking everything up. So right now, that's what's going on. Humans are just like gremlins now. And especially here, Friday night in the East Village, everyone is drinking. They're like gremlins. And when you go outside, you also feel inspired to be gremlin. Not that only they are gremlin, we are not gremlin. My inner gremlin is also there. And you come outside into the environment, and the inner gremlin wants to come out. And you just move along with the force with all the rest of the gremlins, destroying everything in the name of a good time. So having the ability to discern that this is going to invoke my inner gremlin, that is not good for me. And this will invoke my inner angel divinity. That is good, I should follow. So that is glorious. So Krishna is glorifying the discernment here. This yogi is not bewildered. That is a glorification of his ability to discern between the path of light and darkness. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yoga yukta bhavarjuna. Therefore, Arjuna, sarveshu kaleshu, at all times, yoga yukta bhavarjuna. Yoga yukta means you should engage your mind in yoga. So the word here, yoga, if you take it in the context of this particular chapter, especially specifically this chapter, the word yoga here means meditation on Krishna, because earlier he is saying, what is that? 8.5, you remember the verse? Smaram muktva kalevaram. Ante kalecha mameva smaram muktva kalevaram. That one should meditate on me. And especially through the culture of Ananya Bhakti, and you can come out of this material world. So if you always engage your mind in this yoga at all times, then this is the path of light. And this is actually more than the path of light. And so Krishna concludes this chapter by saying that. So this is the last verse of the passage, and we'll finish here. Very nice verse. Vedeshu jagneshu tapasu chaiva daneshu yapunya palam pradishtam. Pradishtam. So Krishna's been speaking about many things up to this point. So Vedeshu means studying the Vedas. Jagneshu means performing various ritual ceremonies prescribed in the Vedas. Tapasu means undergoing different types of austerities by which one can enjoy in this world or the celestial world. Daneshu means giving in some charity. Ya punya palam pradishtam. Punya palam means the fruit of other pious activities. So there are many virtuous activities you can get. And by virtuous activities you enjoy in this world. You want to enjoy, right? You want to enjoy, you want to enjoy. You want to enjoy? Every time you ask a simple question in a philosophical class, everyone gets confused. Last class I asked, what is the difference between wet stool and dry stool? And everyone was, I was asking if a human being makes a difference between the two. And everyone was like, it was like a straightforward question. When you ask questions in philosophical context, it gets confusing. We want to enjoy, that is natural. So to enjoy in this world, you have to do virtuous activity. And if you do sinful activity, then you suffer. That is the basic way the world of karma works. So by the fruits of all these activities, you can get so much of enjoyment, as Krishna is saying. This next line is very important. He says, Atiti tat sarvam idam viditva. Idam viditva. Viditva means knowing this. Idam viditva means knowing this. So knowing what? Knowing what I have taught in this chapter 7 and chapter 8. This is what our commentators are saying. So what is Krishna essentially teaching in chapter 7 and chapter 8? You remember going all the way back to chapter 7. What is the basic teaching in chapter 7? You all recall? Dun, 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 dun.
So, talking about himself? He's talking about who?
True, but a little bit more clarity. Yes, Kevin.
That the soul is entangled in Maya, and if you want to get out of that.
Yes, this is the answer. That there's the inferior Prakriti, the superior Prakriti. What is the inferior Prakriti? Maya. And what is the superior Prakriti? Can't go wrong with that one, huh? The superior Prakriti is the jiva, the soul. So the jiva, the superior Prakriti, is entangled in the inferior Prakriti and suffering, isn't it? You are suffering? You were suffering? You're suffering? Yeah, I'm suffering. Every day I'm suffering. I was suffering so much today. I was like, I can't believe my human being can suffer like this. And like next to me is a guy with like his leg missing, but I'm just like, that ain't even nothing compared to what I'm going through. Because of false ego, we think like this. So the soul is suffering because he's entangled in Maya. And if you want to get out of that Maya, you should worship Krishna. That was the message of the previous chapter. Now, there are different ways in which you can worship Krishna, or different modes of devotion to Krishna, right? Krishna talked about devotion mixed with karma, devotion mixed with jnana. In chapter 8, he talked about devotion mixed with yoga, and then he talked about ananya bhakti, pure devotion to Krishna. So these are different ways which someone can approach Krishna, different paths. You understand? So idam viditva, knowing this is real. This is like the important information. Everyone's talking about, some new discovery in science and this, that. That is not important information, ultimately. Because when you have to die, you won't care about any of these things. Isn't it? Suppose they said they're going to Mars. There's a Mars launch. So you're on your deathbed. You think you would be very interested in that? You think that would be very interesting for you? No, that's not the important information. The important information is how I can become free from death. So here, how I can become free ultimately from Maya, which is the cause of repeated birth and death. So Krishna has already said this is by devotion to him. So there are different ways that devotion can be offered to him. So by knowing this, atyeti tat sarvam, then you can surpass all of these benefits that you get from all these other programs. Studying Vedas, doing yagyas, performing austerities, giving charity, and other virtues. All of this can be surpassed simply by knowing this. Knowing this means also applying this. Atyeti tat sarvam. All of that, this long list was given. Atyeti means is transcended or surpassed. Idam vidi taught by knowing this. What has been taught in chapter 7 and chapter 8. And over and above that, yogi param stadnam upaiti chadyam. One can attain the abode of Krishna or the spiritual reality. So not only are all these other things surpassed by this knowledge, but ultimately it affords you an opportunity to attain the param stadnam, the supreme standing or the supreme place, which is the abode of the Lord or the place of the Lord. So this is the benefit of this particular knowledge in these last 2 chapters that Krishna is encouraging us to give consideration. So we'll stop there. I have questionnaire. You have some questions? No, of course not. Any questions? Yes. What is your name, by the way, again?
I'm Angela.
Angela, okay.
So I think when it comes to things and activities, it's perhaps easier to discern what will lead me to the path of light versus darkness. But does Bhagavad-Gita say anything about people?
Of course. One whole chapter dedicated to that. The divine and demonic natures, which talks about divine consciousness. Divine here doesn't even mean spiritual. Divine actually means virtuous. In chapter 16 of Bhagavad-Gita.
Okay, I'm talking about people around us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So these are the 2 types. Krishna says in chapter 16 also, in this world there are only 2 categories of people, divine and demonic. And Arjuna got a little bit concerned because he's like, I'm over here killing people. Krishna said, no, don't worry, you're in the divine category. You're simply doing this as part of duty in this particular context. So these are the 2 types of people that exist in this world, basically. You could say it's a spectrum. And one end of the spectrum is the virtuous life, which is also called the divine life. And on the other spectrum, there's the vicious life, which is also the path, the dark life. And then, there's a spectrum in between, and many of us, depending on the day, a little bit more on this side, a little bit more on that side. But this is basically the 2 types. It's in chapter 16, so it's a little bit, but he will speak about this. And yes, this is a huge topic always, association. I think there's a statement attributed to Shakespeare where he said, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. And this is probably one of the most uncomfortable parts about becoming a little bit more serious in spiritual life is reevaluating the types of people that you associate with. It's certainly, in my particular case, I got into spiritual life very seriously when I was 18. I joined the monastery when I was 18. And I had many friends. And after I got into Krishna consciousness, I wrote all my friends a letter about the importance of Vaikuntha, which is the spiritual world, and the importance of developing Vaikuntha consciousness. And that was the last I heard from many of them. Which was okay because anyway, I was 18. It was a natural transition period because we were all going off to college and so on. So I didn't really have that challenge that I see a lot of people come with when they come a little bit later and they have many relationships that are important for them. And we have no comment about those relationships. The relationship is about the principle. So the principle is you have to see what you value. And then you generally choose association of persons who share the same values. And so that those values can be nourished and you can grow in that particular area. That's just a general principle. I was talking to a friend about romantic relationships. And I was telling a friend, you have to find some partner that shares the same values as you, or at least a majority of the values. Otherwise, how do you expect to work? That initial, I like you, you like me thing, that fades very quickly. So then at the end of the day, the only thing that will help it to sustain is the shared values there. So that works with association with anyone, actually. Generally, you have to see what it is that you value and you choose according to your association. So when you value spiritual life, you generally tend to choose association that will help nourish that. And you see that all the time, that is natural. So Krishna will give a lot of talk about the different natures of people later on in Gita. That will help us discern between the light and dark sort of people, so to speak. And then you make your decisions, of course. Spiritual life is, as Krishna says in the Gita, or as it's indicated, implied, is not for the weak-hearted, because it does involve a lot of this readjustment, letting go, recalibrating. It can get a little confusing sometimes. Yes.
Just on that point, because like you said, association is a huge part of the discernment of choosing life. You know? And sometimes in our association, we find ourselves with people who we may have like a sentimental attachment to, and that attachment causes us to kind of extend ourselves beyond our capacity. Mm-hmm. So in spiritual life, you know, depending on how much you cultivate, you can only extend yourself so much. And if you cross the line of your capacity, then you tend to compromise your values, which you acquired from your spiritual practice, in order to relate with those individuals. Mm. And so that can become a kind of tricky situation where you're attached to somebody, but the nature of your association or the quality of your association doesn't reflect the values that you've inculcated, and so you feel like you're attached, but you don't really like spending time with them. And then at the same time, you can't really bring them to the platform that you're trying to get to. No, because you just have to wait.
Yeah. Relationships in this world is something like sitting next to someone on the airplane and building up a good conversation and passing the time on the airplane very nicely. But finally, when the plane lands, you go out to your respective locations, never to see each other again. That seems like really dry, right? It's like a horrible analogy, right? But relationships in this world are very much like that. Even relationship with your parents and anyone, because you're brought together by time for a period of time. And the best case scenario is that death is going to separate you. That's the best case scenario. But of course, the way things are going these days, you don't have to wait until death. The separation is happening earlier. And in many cases, at least certainly in the case of death, there's separation, never to relate to that particular individual again, at least in that particular body. You may say, well, soulmates, we're traveling. That may be something to that also. That's possible, but you will not relate to them in the way that you were relating in this particular life. So all relationships are like that. They have an end date, an end point. Just like you get on the airplane, you build up some nice. This happened to me many times, where I've dressed with my war marks on, the tilak and everything. And people get, are you religious? Nah. Yeah, I'm an art student. So they see that you spark up some conversation. It could be like a very nice conversation. If someone was looking at us from third-party perspective, they think, oh, we are very close friends, that we have so much love for each other. Finally, the plane lands and we go off to our different ways, never to see or think about each other ever again. Maybe you think about that for a second because you want to put up an Instagram post or something, but finally it's over. So basically, understanding that this is actually the nature of relationships, then we should see that what is the best thing I can give in the short time that's been given to me. A short time can be 100 years or it can be, a few moments. But what is the best thing I can contribute in the short time that I have with this particular soul? And similarly, what is it that I'm gaining especially in terms of spiritual value? You have to make an analysis like that, because you can go on being attached to someone sentimentally, but finally there will be something that will cut it. Either you do it voluntarily or nature will do it for you. And if you wasted all your time by sentimental attachment, then you'll feel the pangs of that separation, that forced separation. Now that's obviously easier said than done, but at least on the intellectual level, this is the point.
But what of love and sacrifice?
Yes. What do you mean love and sacrifice? You can elaborate.
You're not just in the context of romantic relationships,
Yeah.
but just let's say someone is not great,
Yeah.
not interested in
Yeah.
any path at all.
Yes.
So how should we be relating to these people in our lives?
Yes, you.
Love? I mean, isn't it always love?
Yeah, I would say yes. You can say love, but you have to define love also. Because I say love, and not everyone's thinking their own concept. So how are we defining love there? So for like a Vedanta tradition, like let's say Bhakti Yoga and Vedanta. So the love means you're contributing to the highest potential of that individual. I think that's a generic definition of love that anyone can appreciate. That I'm making, even if it's the smallest investment, I'm investing in the highest potential of that particular individual. Now for Vedanta, that highest potential is a spiritual potential. And so you're making an investment. Now, if they're very like against spiritual life, then your investment in them may be just setting a good example by which they see you and be inspired by what you're doing. You may not be able to talk to them so much about it or exchange on that level, but you may be in a committed relationship where you can't just cut it either, nor you're interested in doing that, at least in the right now. So then there will be some level of intuitive insight based on your knowledge of how to relate to different sorts of entities. But there are some entities where we can understand this is just not good for me or healthy for what I value right now in my life. And in that case, there might have to be separation also. Respectful doesn't mean like, hey, I just want to call you and say, yeah, I'm really into yoga now and meditation, and yeah, you're really bad for me. So I just want to let you know that I won't be talking to you again. I'm removing you from my phone book. I'm blocking you on Instagram and Facebook, so don't feel surprised. And you have to be like retarded like that, right? But there's like a conscious like I have to step back. In any case, people are doing it all the time for much less things in spiritual life. They're doing it for just chasing after their own sense gratification. Sometimes they say they love and sacrifice for you, and then they sacrifice you for their own gratification. That's happening all the time. It's not like whether it's in romantic relationships or even familiar relationships, it's happening everywhere. Finally, the souls in this world ultimately have no intrinsic relationship with each other. The relationship is actually one that's created by the body and the ego that is connected to that particular body. So therefore, you can see souls can sacrifice each other's bodies and so on, relationships like that for their own self. So finally, at the end of the day, we have to have a clarity about what it is that we value. And then we will relate to all entities according to that value. With certain entities, it may involve a separation. With other entities, it may involve just setting a good example and inspiring them. You'll get some intuitive insight how to do that. As your knowledge increases, you'll get intuitive insight how to relate. But it should just be crystal clear what it is that you want in your life. What is it that is actually valuable? Yes.
When you say it's an art that comes with experience, like you're just saying, it increases as your knowledge increases.
Yes.
About you.
Yes. I always like to clarify that many times people say experience is the best teacher, but experience means experience informed by knowledge. I like to give the analogy that knowledge is like the fire of digestion. So fire of digestion allows you to digest foods and process the good stuff for the body, and then the stuff that's not needed for the body gets evacuated. So similarly, the fire of knowledge allows you to take in experience and process that which is meaningful for spiritual life, and that which is not so useful can be evacuated from your consciousness. So yeah, if you have proper knowledge, then your experience with that knowledge allows you to grow very nicely and gain clarity how to, relate in this world in a healthy way. There will probably be some mistakes along the way, so we shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes also and apologizing for that. That happens also sometimes. In the name of our spiritual life, we go straight fanatic, and I don't even want to tell you some of my nightmare stories of fanaticism when I first got into Krishna consciousness and spiritual life. The sort of things that I told my mother was just like, when I look back on it now, I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that or did that. So sometimes mistakes are made and you have to apologize also. But at least the value even in that is that you have a clarity about what it is that you're going for and what you value and you're investing in that, even though mistakes are sometimes made. Like that. In any case, whether you do it or not, nature will do it for you. And
What do you mean by that? You
means,
said it like 3 times.
yeah, death.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, death will come. Death of your relationships, death of this body ultimately. So you can become detached in a healthy way now, or you'll be forced to detach in an unhealthy way later. And then the later detachment will be very painful. So the encouragement is to become healthily detached now. Yes.
You know how like people who read past lives say that you might have met someone you know in this
Yes.
life,
Yes.
in a previous life.
Yes.
Is it the same in?
Yeah, it's possible. It's not impossible. So that's why I said, even if that is the case, you won't meet them in the same way that you knew them previously. I read one of my first books that really launched my own spiritual investigation before I came to this Vedanta tradition was this book called Only Love is Real. And the cover of it was like a silhouette of a man and woman facing each other. So I thought it was a romantic novel. So that's why I picked it up. I was like, okay, I've never read a romantic novel before. This should be interesting. And then when I read it, it was about this famous author named Brian Weiss, who does past life regression. And so he had two what's the word I'm looking for? Patients, basically, that were coming to him, a man and a woman. And they were telling the same exact life, but from the different perspectives of who they were in those particular lives. And after 2 years of seeing both these patients, he realized that they were telling the exact same story. Now he had confidentiality things, so he couldn't tell them this. So he tried to play matchmaker in this particular life by just meeting them together to see if like sparks would fly and everything. It's a very interesting book. And this is all true story. This is not a fictional book, it's nonfiction. And they see each other. There were like no particular sparks in his life or anything, but as Providence would have it, toward the end of the book, the man was from Mexico, and he was going to Mexico to visit family, and she was going to Mexico to do some work, and they got on the same airplane, and they started talking about their various lives and experiences with Brian Weiss, and then they realized that they were telling the same story through from different perspectives. You know, and then they ended up getting married. Just like, how wonderful! Soulmates. So that's the problem. Soulmates. Cellmate. Because this is the problem. So this is the issue with the conditioned souls. We don't appreciate the problem that is death, that is mortality. Therefore, Krishna later on will say in Gita chapter 13, Jama mritu jara vyadi dukkha dosha anudarshana. Anudarshana. The word anudarshana means you should continually see. Darshana means to see. Anu means continuously. You should continuously see the fault that is birth, death, disease, and old age. And this is an item of knowledge because from one who can see that, then they can get perspective of what is actually valuable, particularly death. Death forces you to think what is, just like now, if you were going to die tomorrow, like suppose you have to, you went to the doctor or something, you found out you're going to die tomorrow. Immediately, you're forced to think about what is actually valuable and act on that, isn't it? That is the nature of death, contemplation. So our issue in the material world, we don't really appreciate this death. So we see a story like this, and it just seems like so romantic or just beautiful, souls traveling around together, life after life. I mean, a lot of lives that we're telling were horrible lives. But never mind that, at least we endured it together. This is all Maya. This is illusion. Basically, real relationship means how to help a person get free from this death. Because that death is also not wanted by anyone. At least as far as Vedantists, I think as far as our experience informs us, and also at least as far as the Shastra informs us, death is not wanted by anyone. So real relationship, romantic type, familiar type, communal type, your leader, is how to help a person get free from this death problem. What is that verse? Guru nasashat, sojano nasasat, jani nasasat, pitaro nasasat. Namochiyaya samupetim. You know this verse? Guru nasashat. Don't become a guru. Don't become a father. Don't become a husband. Don't become a wife, a mother, a public leader, a relative, which I was like, it's kind of hard to avoid, but don't become any of these categories. Unless you can deliver your dependent from the path of death. Namochaya means if you cannot deliver them, mochaya means like liberation. From the path of death, then don't become any of these things. So at least you can, just by that verse, you can understand the culture had a certain clarity about the death problem. And we hear from the Ramayana that in Lord Ramchandra's kingdom, the way the people used to greet each other would say, "How is your endeavor to conquer over death going today?" Can you imagine someone greeted you like that? First of all, if someone had greeted us like that today, we're like, "Bro, chill out. Like, homie, chill out. It's not that serious." But it is that serious. They would greet each other. "How is your endeavor to conquer over death going today, Travis?" "Not going so well today." "How is your endeavor for conquering over death going?" But that's how the culture understood this is an issue. And so they would go for liberation. So finally, that is a beautiful relationship. A relationship in which the partners help one another to practice yoga. And here by yoga, we mean samadhi, meditational absorption. And as far as chapter 8 is concerned, we mean meditation of Krishna. That is a beautiful relationship. They help each other manifest their highest potential in terms of getting free from the chains of death. And simply traveling around life after life together, but not helping in that particular way, is not so beautiful. Naishkarmyam api achuta bhava varjitam. Naishkarmyam apyap achuta bhava varjitam. Na shobhate gyanamanam naranjana. This is, at least bhakti teachings like this. Naishkarmyam, even if a person is free from karma, but achuta bhava varjitam, they are devoid of achuta bhav, no devotion for Krishna, achuta. Then na shobhate. Now shobhate means not very beautiful. So therefore, devotees or Vedantins, devotees are a little bit more accommodating for relationships with this. We say relationships are very important, but we say relationships with this focus. If you follow the Vedanta tradition as it is normally understood in India, they relate, all of it is just complete maya in their opinion. So you ask a bhakti yogi, we are theistic Vedanta. So we say relationships are important, but it has to be relationships centered in this way. But if you ask the other Vedantins, Vedanta is very popular. This whole teaching of oneness, we're all one being, that is Shankaracharya's Advaita Vedanta. That is very popular. And the yoga studios, even though yoga is different from Vedanta, and yoga studios, they mostly teach people, or they speak like a Vedantin. We're all one, where it's all of this body, this is all the solution. This is Advaita Vedanta. But if you follow Advaita Vedanta, they say all relationships are maya. That's what they say. So at least in Theistic Vedanta, they say relationships are good, but they have to be centered in this way. So our point is like this: you have some relationship, that is okay. But if it's achuta bhava varjitam, it's devoid of devotion. Bhav means devotion for achuta. Not shobhate means not very beautiful. So well, what is about them traveling life after life together? Not shobhate. Not very beautiful. So there's some people don't appreciate that, but that is a Vedanta view on that thing because they have a certain way of looking at death and so on. So you say, "Well, I disagree with that." That is okay. Everyone's allowed their own opinion. But I would say that you'll get your own experience of how Nashobhate it is. If you don't have trust in the Shastra, then you'll get your own life experience, and you will see for yourself. So I'm not going to argue with you, of course, if you disagree. That is okay also. But you can see for yourself how beautiful it is. So we'll stop there. I did have a question, but thank you all for your questions and participation. it expresses your interest in the subject matter. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot.